Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we've got some malicious compliance stories and our first story of the day is by whatever. You are not allowed to decide when to eat lunch. Got it, boss. This was some time ago, probably early 2000s, but this event is burned into my brain. I'm sure over the years the story has been embellished a bit, but the core of the story is told exactly as it happened. I've worked in K-12 education technology most of my 20+ years in my professional career. When I first started, I was the only technician for a small/medium school district, 2,500 or so students. During the time of this event, the director of special education, SPED, was married to the superintendent. I reported to the business manager who used to teach technology but was not a technical person. For the most part, I was left to do my work and was not overly micromanaged. So I got into a habit of taking my lunch whenever I felt like it, or even not at all. If I didn't take lunch and there was no pressing work, I would just leave a little early at the end of the day. Of course, I made sure all the schools were out before I left. As time goes on, I got in trouble for leaving early. So I would take my lunch whenever time permitted. Sometimes it was when there was only an hour left from work, sometimes not. But I would chill at my desk and just screw off. The others in the office where my desk was reported me for screwing off every afternoon. When I tried to explain to the business manager that I was taking my lunch, she says something to the effect of, "You can no longer take lunch whenever you want. Your lunch is from 12 to 1. I say, "No problem, message received." So starting that day, no matter what I was doing, at 12 I would stop what I was doing and take my lunch. If I was at my desk, I would screw off. If I was at a school site, I would go sit in my car. Fast forward a month or two later, at about 11:30 the director of SPED calls and says his computer is not working and I need to come fix it right away. I say sure thing, on my way. When I get to his office, he says please fix it and heads off to a meeting. So I start in on removing all spyware he has managed to collect. At this time, all employees were local admins on their desktops. About 1/3 of the way through, 12 o'clock hits. I stand up and walk out of his office and tell the secretary I'll be back in an hour. Out to my car I go, expecting a phone call any minute. And sure enough, about 15 minutes in, I get a phone call from the business manager. Here's about how the call goes. "I hear you walked out of the SPED director's office without fixing his computer." "Correct, it's my lunchtime." "What do you mean, you couldn't fix his computer first?" "I could have, but you told me that I could not decide when my lunch break was, that I had to take lunch from 12 to 1. "Wait, that's not what I meant." "But that is what you said. If I stayed and worked on the computer and took my lunch at 1 or 1:30, I did not want to get in trouble for screwing off when I was supposed to be working." "Okay, I'll call you back." She calls back about 15 minutes later, asking if I can please go back in and finish his computer, and from now on, I can decide when the best time to take my lunch is. And it was never talked about again. It was nice being able to go home early when I didn't have my lunch again. In your guys' opinions, if somebody doesn't take their lunch break, do you think that they should be able to use that time to leave work early if it's at the very end of their shift? Or do you think a lunch break is something that they have to use during work hours or else they just miss out on having that break until the ending hour of their shift? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Gemini0420. Alter the inventory report so I don't have to explain things. Back in 2016, I took over as lab manager. The previous guy running the lab, as well as the boss, were the golden children and could do no wrong. Later found out they were omitting all kinds of information on monthly reports to make the numbers look good. My first month, I ran the reports and submitted the inventory report to admin. I found 85 items that were red tagged. Failed diagnostic tests, non-operational. An admin calls me asking why it's so different from the previous month as there were only 5 assets on the previous report. I tell them I have no clue why that is and that I'm simply doing truth in reporting of our inventory. They tell me to remove information and to make it match the previous month. I explain that these are all failed/broken assets on hand. But they tell me they don't want to explain to upper management about a change to 85 failed assets from 5. I run this through my boss and explain the truth and reporting. He says just do it. So I deleted the data to match the previous month's report, and everyone is happy. I am submitting these altered reports for 5 months with no complaints. The higher-ups do an unannounced walkthrough one day and decided to look at our master inventory. They see the list of red tag assets and ask why there's so many and that it doesn't match the reports they get. I explain that I simply submit the data my boss tells me to submit. They aren't happy with the answer. My boss gets his butt chewed out. Crap rolls downhill and I get yelled at which point I reminded him about what he wanted me to do. A week later, they are asking for complete truth and reporting and want to see all red-tagged assets on the monthly report. Lucky me, I already knew what was going on with them and was easy to update the status. We quickly resolved all the issues, repairs, and refurbishing, and I am recognized for running an amazing lab with an award from our inspectors. The truth shall set you free. If you've ever had to work in a situation where they have to keep all these things under wraps, and it finally hits the fan and it all gets out there and you're finally able to just have everything truthful, you don't know how much of a weight that feels like getting lifted off of the entire company's shoulders. You no longer have to sandbag all this needless stuff. You're just ready to just report what's broken, get it all fixed, and have everything functional. This next story is by Gamer7995207. Your dress code should be more specific. One summer during college, I worked at a telemarketing agency. This was back when telemarketing was a semi-respectable job. I sold lots of different products, from long-distance phone plans to retirement annuities via a patriotic credit card company. Anyway, being a semi-respectable firm, our call center had a dress code. Nothing out of the ordinary, really. Men had to wear button-up shirts with collars, a tie, dress pants, and dress shoes. No jeans, t-shirts, or sneakers. Women had more leeway. Pretty much the only restrictions were no open-toe shoes, and dresses had to be below the knee. Violating the dress code was punishable by being sent home for your shift. One day, I had a laundry emergency. The clothes dryer had broken and all of my work shirts were still wet when I went to retrieve them. The only shirts I had left that were even close to dress code were shirts with a Nehru collar. That is to say, almost no collar. As such, you don't wear a tie with this type of shirt. I decided to roll the dice. I suited up and threw on my blazer to help camouflage my dress code violation. Once I get to work, I go straight to my cube and work my shift with no problems. This is great. I had just doubled my work wardrobe, so I would wear one of my Nehru shirts once a week or so. I didn't want to push my luck. During the same time, I had noticed some of the women blatantly violating the dress code. Way too short dresses, sweatpants, flip-flops, etc. No one ever called them out on it. I figured the dress code had been relaxed and I just didn't get the memo. I continued to follow the dress code with the exception of my occasional Nehru shirts. This went on for several weeks until one day my manager calls me into her office. I figure the jig is up. Sure enough, she has me called in to reprimand me for not wearing a tie. The HR manager is there as well. I try to explain that you don't wear a tie with this type of shirt. The HR manager replied with, "That's a good point. That's 2 violations." I got a write-up, but got to finish my shift since it was almost over anyway. Cue the malicious compliance. It was Friday, so I went home and stewed about the encounter. I hatched a plan. Saturday morning, I went to the local thrift store and bought some of the ugliest ties and button-up collared shirts I could find. One particularly eye-scorching tie I found was knitted, bright orange with horizontal teal stripes. The shirts were mainly pastel colors, but I also found a few gems that included a pink, green, and yellow plaid, a red and neon green Hawaiian shirt, and a red, white, and blue vertical striped shirt. All button-up with collars. I paid less than $10 for 10 shirts and 15 ties. To be fair, most of the items were not too bad on their own. However, when I went back to work, I made no effort to color coordinate. The result was a mix-mash of clashing colors and patterns that should have come with a "warning may cause seizures" label. I went to work the full week without acknowledging my outlandish attire. Why would I? I was following the dress code to the letter. By the Wednesday of the following week, management had had enough. Again, I was called into the manager's office. Again, the HR manager was also there. But there was a new guy. Turns out he was an executive from Patriotic Credit Card Company. Manager starts with, "We've had some complaints about your attire." I looked confused. "It's a collared shirt," I replied as I patted my tie as if to make sure it was still there. "Oh, it's not that. Your look is just, well, it's jarring." "I don't follow." I drug this out for about 2 minutes before HR lady had had enough and just full face screamed at me, "Don't think I don't know what you're trying to pull, you little crap with your ugly clothes." Such language, and from an HR person. Executive guy was visibly taken aback. For my part, I just started crying. Huge crocodile tears. "You think my clothes are ugly?" At this point, everyone in the room is visibly uncomfortable as I continue to ugly cry in the office. Manager attempted to defuse the situation. "What we're trying to say is it's just unprofessional." I snapped up and screamed, "She didn't say unprofessional, she said ugly," as I jabbed my finger at her. I was loud enough that I'm sure they heard me in on the call floor. I calmed down after a minute. "What exactly is wrong with the way I'm dressed?" I asked, still sobbing. "Well, the colors," she started. I interrupted. "What colors am I not allowed to wear?" I caught an amused smirk from the executive guy. She stammered. "Because there's no mention of prohibited colors in the dress code," I interrupted again. "I don't think this is working out. You're fired." I stood up and collected myself. "You will be hearing from my attorney," I said as I left the room. My attorney being my cousin, but they didn't need to know that. So yeah, I got fired. But it was a win in my book. I made them tell me my clothes were ugly. Also, I found out afterwards that not only did the company lose the Patriotic Credit Card Company annuity account, the HR manager was fired, asked to resign, and my manager was sent back to corporate. I would like to think that I was the cause of that. OP was in there for an entire week walking around like the human equivalent of graphic design is my passion. Imagine dressing so badly that you made the HR manager snap at you and yell at you that it's all ugly clothing and whatnot. It was a beautiful acting job that OP put on. Sadly, the only award it earned them was a pink slip. Our next story is by Twice Upon a December, Coworker versus Doctor Everyone Hated. So I work in a call center for a hospital. We take patient calls and employee calls and just basically transfer people to who they need to speak with. And sometimes we answer really minor questions. A lot of people assume we know everything or don't actually know what they're looking for, and we course correct, so to speak. For instance, if an employee calls and asks for a doctor who isn't on call, we say so and say, "Do you mean so-and-so instead?" And all's well. But around the time that I started, there was a really nasty resident, doctor in training, who was awful to everyone, rude, didn't listen, yelled a lot, and just generally thought that his crap didn't stink. He would frequently ask for things that didn't make sense, or would ask for the wrong person, and just generally didn't know what was going on, but would act like he was superior to everyone. He also really didn't like or respect women. So it was particularly hard for us to try to explain anything to him. One day, he wouldn't listen when my coworker tried to explain that the person he was asking for wasn't the person who could solve the problem he had. Instead of letting her even get any words out, he just lectured her and demanded she do what he asked. Anyway, I didn't realize it was malicious compliance at the time cause I was pretty young, but it makes me laugh now. My coworker decided to start giving him only exactly what he asked for. "You've asked for a doctor who's not on call? Great, you got it, doc." "Ah, crap, he yelled at you because he wasn't on call? That's awful. You've asked me to stop paging you with the same number so frequently? No problem." "Oh darn, you forgot that they wanted you because you only got one of the pages? That sure sucks." "You want us to page a team that doesn't exist on the weekends and therefore the corresponding pager isn't carried by anyone? Oh, what a shame no one answered you." I would have never have had the balls to do it, but the level of confused rage she worked him up into that day sure was hilarious to hear about. especially because he was too arrogant to admit he was the problem, but couldn't falter for doing exactly what he asked. If you're going to be the absolute biggest of jerks and just demand constantly that they do only what you're asking for, at some point they realize they're not being paid enough to deal with that constant barrage of just hot air. Just give them all the problematic stuff they demand. Just give them all the problematic stuff they demand and let them fall on their own butt. It's honestly the best way to go. And our final story of the day is by Maniac Gamer 135, sort of. I got my first chance at malicious compliance today, and I don't think it's that malicious, but okay. For context, my mother's car has a faulty seat, so when someone needs to get into the back, you have to fold the seats down. I hopped in the back and I was holding the seat back for my sister so the seat wouldn't slam in her face. When she got in, she said, "You don't need to hold the seat." So I let go of the seat, and the headrest slammed into the side of her face, and her only reply was a simple, "Okay then." The question that comes to my mind is, why did they feel it was so necessary to be kind of a jerk over something that somebody's doing as a very simple courtesy? It's like somebody holds a door open for somebody else and they're like, "You don't have to open that door for me." It's like, what did I do something? You know, like, what's wrong? But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.